Good afternoon and welcome to Law and Crime. I'm Angelica Spanos. Thanks so much for joining us today. All right, so that was psychiatrist Dr. Michael Mayer. He was called to the stand for the defense. And basically he said that he believes Loyd is mentally ill and that he suffers from psychosis. He also said that if a person is delusional, that classifies as a psychotic disorder. So we're seeing this introduction today from doctors that were on the stand. One of them said he has PTSD. Another one introducing some more of this psychological disorder type of episodes and mentioning that. So this is a good time now to talk with our guests. Today we have Andrew Cherkasky as well as Ann Bremner with us, both trial attorneys. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
So we're getting this look from all these doctors that Loyd is obviously not mentally stable here, and they're bringing this up. They're saying that he has these issues. Ann, what do you think of that? Did you expect this to happen in the penalty phase?
I expected it primarily because of the way he acted on the stand. I mean, we all watched that. I mean, we're incredulous, about some of the things he said and how in some ways he was engaging, but in a lot of ways he was horrifying and didn't make a whole lot of sense. So I thought that was the setup piece for this part of with the penalty phase. And it's the best he can do. I mean, to talk about his terrible childhood, talk about PTSD, talk about being psychotic, but not reaching the standard, of course, the high standard of insanity.
Right. And Andrew, do you think that this is helping the defense by bringing up these issues and talking about his mental health here and the wellness of him?
That's a great question. Here's the difficult thing for a defense attorney. The Supreme Court has essentially said that defense attorneys in death penalty cases have a requirement to present, or at least to thoroughly investigate, potential mental health disorders, as well as traumatic brain injury previous to the alleged crime. So as a defense attorney, you almost have to put it forward. But I do think in some cases, by putting out there the idea that the person is psychotic or has certain inabilities to control themselves through their mental health, I think sometimes juries see that as a greater risk, as a greater factor, and they feel like the death penalty is more appropriate because they want to, I guess, rid society of this potential danger.
So there is Loyd there. This was when he objected on the record in the courtroom last night. No surprise, really, because we've seen him continuously have these sort of outbursts in the courtroom. And I'm curious what you all think of that, because as I said, it's not really surprising. This has been his way that he's made it through this trial with these outbursts. And what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I really think that he's been quirky. He has these outbursts, but sometimes when I've taught trial practice, like at NIDA, National Institute for Trial Advocacy, and places like that, they bring up my cousin Vinny, in terms of like, this is how to do a case, very simple and direct, but kind of charming. He kind of has that, although the jury looked past it and convicted him. Those outbursts in some ways, I mean, trials can be awfully boring, and this one certainly isn't. But let's see if it helps him in the penalty phase with some more expert testimony to kind of frame it up.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that, because as he's been through this trial, even with his outbursts and what he said, sort of going off on these long tangents a lot of times, telling these stories, he sounds like he has like a pretty good grasp on what's going on here. Yet now we're hearing that maybe he has all these psychological disorders, narcissism and things like that. So Andrew, how does that play into all of this?
I think it perhaps explains his boldness or his willingness to interrupt and to be so forthright, I guess, in expressing his complaints to the court. You see this only very rarely, where a client, the accused, the defendant, is actually willing to speak up and say something to the court and doesn't just trust the attorney. Now, a lot of time what you hear later on in appeal is my attorney didn't do, my attorney didn't say, etc. This is an individual who thinks obviously enough about the way that he presents himself that he's comfortable to just state what he believes.
Right. All right. And we had multiple doctors take the stand. One of them that we want to play back for you, who was on the stand earlier today, is Dr. Joseph Sade. He's a neuropsychologist, and he examined Loyd after the crime. Dr. Sade speaks about these delusions, and he says that he thinks that Loyd is suffering from a psychotic disorder, and that's all related to having these delusions. He also said that he believes Loyd suffers from a major thought disorder. So this is interesting, because now we're hearing that this guy's delusional, and this is after we hear him going off on these rants through the trial, telling all these stories. I mean, this is sounding pretty good for the defense. I don't know. Ann, what do you think?
I think it's sounding really good for the defense. I mean, to have that many disorders with bases to say so, with seemingly credible expert witnesses, psychiatrists, who are willing to come in and testify to these things. We don't want to kill the mentally ill. In certain circumstances, we don't. But certain circumstances with the mentally ill, the issue goes to a jury. But that's very compelling when you're looking at whether or not he's going to lose his life as a result of what these things happen. Remembering that this was self-defense, at least per the defendant. And that when you look at his persecution issues, his thoughts that he's somehow people are coming after him, it kind of plays into what he had in the underlying trial as a defense.
And not only the number of neurological things they're speaking about, but also the number of doctors who have verified that he does have these. So we have at least 3 doctors already saying that he does have some sort of mental thing going on here. So Andrew, how does that play in? Because when you have this many doctors confirming that, is that also good for the defense?
Yeah, I'll agree with Ann to a large degree. I mean, traditionally and from a sense of American justice, we try not to kill the mentally ill. That's generally how the law has been orchestrated. However, I do find that sometimes juries tend to go the other way with it, where they feel like somebody who isn't all there, who isn't connected in the way that we traditionally think of somebody who doesn't have these mental illnesses, and they want to essentially rid our society of that person. And so they feel like that person presents a greater risk than if the mental illnesses were not there. So I think traditionally, and the way that we expect our juries to act, these are facts that tend to help the defense, but there is a real risk that the jury is scared away by it.
All right, we will have to see. Andrew, Ann, thank you. We want to go back and play some of Markeith Loyd's testimony. It was a moment from Loyd's testimony, and that was when he was talking about how he would never have wanted to kill Sade Dixon. He didn't want to kill the baby. He even said that there was doubt that this baby was his, but he wanted this baby and he wanted to raise this baby because he did not have that opportunity with other of his children. This was a moment that maybe resonates, as Ann said earlier, where people kind of found him a little bit endearing, even though he was on these rants and rampages, if you will, in his speech. But we know that the jury is likely going to spend a lot more time deciding how to punish him than they did when they decided to convict him. And we know that they don't impose any potential sentence of death. The jury will make their recommendation, and then the judge will actually impose the sentence. So that's what's going to happen at the end of this phase. But this, again, is Loyd talking about the self-defense part of this, if you will. How does this play into the sentencing if you had to kind of tie it all together, Andrew?
I think what it shows is some degree of remorse. I mean, the idea that he has communicated, the idea that he has value towards other people's lives, the idea that he communicated that he didn't want to have to kill someone, in some way that communicates remorse. It communicates his idea of wrong versus right and that he was put into a situation. So to the extent that we are in this phase where a death has occurred, we can see some idea that perhaps the jury will find some connection to what he's saying. Now, do I think that's an overwhelmingly strong possibility here? No, but I do think that it has some merit for the defense in this case. All
right, and Ann, do you agree with Andrew?
I do agree, and I think that one danger I see with this defense is to have too many diagnoses, too many doctors, and it's almost like the jury would say, enough already. It's like you getting the whole kitchen sink thrown in there. So, and then the remorse, they're penalty case. So, of course, they're going to try everything.
All right. And Andrew, thank you so much. We're going to take a quick break right now on Law and Crime. Stay with us, so plenty more after this.